I need to tell you about the moment I realized the American empire had suffered its most humiliating defeat in decades. It was January 10th, 2025, and I was watching Nicolas Maduro get sworn in for a third term as Venezuela's president on live television from my Athens study. What made this moment so shocking wasn't just that Maduro survived, it was how he survived. Because 6 months earlier, America had deployed its largest military force to Latin America since the Cuban Missile Crisis. The USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group, 10 guided missile destroyers, nuclear submarines, F-35 fighters stationed in Puerto Rico, 16,000 personnel positioned just 7 miles from Venezuelan territorial waters. The most sophisticated economic warfare in history had wiped out 99% of Venezuela's government revenues. Every tool of American coercion had been deployed: frozen assets, seized refineries, systematic exclusion from international payment systems. This was supposed to be America's easy victory, the demonstration of what happens when you defy Washington's will. Instead, I was watching the operational manual for imperial decline being written in real time, and the lessons from Venezuela's survival are now spreading across the globe faster than anyone in Washington realizes. Let me take you back to understand how impossible this victory should have been. In 2019, when I was analyzing the Venezuelan crisis for a European Policy Institute, the numbers were staggering. UN Special Rapporteur documented the most violent economic blockade in modern history. Venezuela's economy had contracted by over 75%. Hyperinflation reached 1 million%. Basic medicines disappeared from hospitals. Food became scarce in markets. The economic warfare was so intense it made Greece's austerity program look gentle by comparison. When I served as Greece's finance minister during our debt crisis, I witnessed firsthand how American-led financial institutions weaponize economic pressure. The message was always the same: submit or be destroyed. Venezuela faced something far worse than what we experienced in Greece. While we dealt with austerity demands and debt restructuring, Venezuela confronted what can only be called financial genocide: the freezing of $7 billion in gold reserves held in the Bank of England, the seizure of Citgo, Venezuela's crown jewel refining assets in the US, complete exclusion from international payment systems. Yet something extraordinary happened that defied every economic textbook I'd ever studied. Instead of capitulating, Venezuela innovated. They created what I call survival capitalism, a hybrid system combining state control, black market flexibility, and international partnerships that bypass Western oversight entirely. The first adaptation mechanism was dollarization. The country sacrificed monetary sovereignty but imported price stability. Walking through Caracas markets today, you'll find vendors accepting US dollars alongside bolivars. It's economic heresy from a socialist government, but it worked. The second mechanism genuinely surprised me when I discovered it during my research. This small Caribbean nation built a comprehensive alternative economic network with China, Russia, and Iran. China became Venezuela's largest oil buyer overnight. Russian trade increased 64% in 2024. Iranian tankers appeared in Venezuelan ports, creating supply chains that completely bypass Western financial systems. The third mechanism is perhaps the most fascinating from an economist's perspective. The sanctions inadvertently strengthened criminal networks that created alternative revenue streams: illegal gold mining, oil smuggling, cryptocurrency operations. These generated liquidity invisible to Western financial surveillance. America accidentally wrote Venezuela's survival manual with its own sanctions. But here's what truly shocked me about this crisis. Venezuela's endurance isn't just a testament to Venezuelan resilience. It's proof that the global power structure has fundamentally shifted. The Monroe Doctrine, which for over a century made the Western Hemisphere America's sphere of influence, lies in ruins. I witnessed this shift personally during a virtual CELAC meeting I attended in September. 20 Latin American countries expressed deep alarm over US military deployments. Even left-wing governments in Brazil and Colombia, while refusing to recognize Maduro's 2024 election, opposed US military intervention. This represents an unprecedented middle ground that reflects multipolar reality. The coalition of 60 countries that recognized Juan Guaidó in 2019 has completely collapsed. Today, most of America's own allies are quietly hedging their bets. When I spoke with European central bankers last month, the conversation was revealing. They are systematically diversifying their reserves away from dollars. Not dramatically, not publicly, but methodically. The economic consequences extend far beyond Venezuela. If a country can survive a 99% revenue collapse through sanctions evasion, the coercive power of dollar-based financial warfare is being fundamentally questioned. This accelerates development of alternative payment systems, eroding a cornerstone of U.S. global power. Let me tell you what keeps me awake at night about Venezuela's success. The survival model is being exported. I've seen the evidence. Myanmar's military junta consulted Venezuelan advisors after their coup. Iran's Revolutionary Guard sent delegations to Caracas to study sanctions evasion techniques. African leaders are quietly implementing Venezuela's parallel economy strategies. This is why Venezuela matters beyond its borders. It's not just one country defying American power. It's proof that defiance is possible, profitable, and replicable. Every authoritarian leader watching this crisis learned the same lesson. America's economic weapons can be neutralized. The manual Venezuela created contains 3 key chapters. First, coup-proofing in the 21st century. Maduro's model shows it's no longer enough to simply control the army. You must create parallel security structures, militias, competing intelligence agencies with vested interests in regime survival. Foreign powers cannot simply decapitate leadership, but must fight fragmented, multi-layered wars of attrition. Second, sanctions evasion as national security priority. Venezuela's adaptation proves that under sanctions, the goal isn't thriving but creating sustainable survival equilibrium. This involves strategic dollarization, systematic cultivation of gray and black markets, and pre-negotiated alternative economic lifelines before sanctions hit. Third, the geopolitical pivot as defensive weapon. Venezuela's survival demonstrates the existence of a competitive great power market. China's Belt and Road Initiative, Russia's arms industry, regional powers like Turkey and Iran all provide nodes in alternative networks. Aligning with them becomes rational economic survival strategy, not ideological choice. The numbers tell an extraordinary story that mainstream media won't report. Despite sanctions designed to cause immediate collapse, Venezuela's non-oil exports increased 73% between 2020 and 2024. How? Through bilateral trade agreements with over 40 countries using local currencies, gold and cryptocurrency. Resource access is being permanently redrawn. Venezuela holds the world's largest proven oil reserves. The failed U.S. strategy means Chinese and Russian companies are positioned as primary beneficiaries of future resource development. This represents massive transfer of resource access from the American sphere to competitors. The demonstration effect cannot be overstated. Deploying the largest force in 60 years and still failing to remove Maduro sends an unmistakable message. American power is no longer determinative. Future scholars will mark this as the moment when American hegemony began its irreversible decline. But here's the final irony that reveals the deeper tragedy. America's greatest enemy in Venezuela wasn't Maduro, wasn't China or Russia. It was America's own arrogance. By believing their propaganda about invincibility, they walked into a trap they created for themselves. This wasn't inevitable. Had Washington approached Venezuela with economic partnership instead of economic warfare, had they chosen diplomacy over domination, we might be living in a different world. But empires cannot help but overreach, and in that overreach they plant the seeds of their destruction. What happened in the Caribbean will echo across continents. The next time Washington threatens sanctions, the world will remember Venezuela. They'll remember that resistance is possible. The empire didn't just lose a country, it lost the fear factor that made its dominance possible. The Venezuelan experiment succeeded because the world was ready for alternatives. Once that psychological barrier breaks, once the myth of American invincibility crumbles, everything changes. We're witnessing economic history being written in real time, and the script no longer favors the empire that thought it would rule forever.